Alright, so today will be our first TED Talk, or Fed Talk, that is actually filmed and put on YouTube. So it's going to be on universal basic income. And this concept is generally regarded as like a socialist ideology, but in many ways it's highly regarded on both the conservative libertarian side of the political spectrum and the far left. So it's actually really interesting how that works, but the main focus of today will be on how it can be implemented in the future and why it needs to be eventually implemented, and what it is in itself. So essentially, universal basic income is where you essentially give a certain amount to every single person across the board. So, for example, like I believe in Switzerland, they're testing out $2,500 universal basic income. So every single person in the entire country will be getting $2,500, whether you're as long as you're over the age of 18, whether you're well below the poverty line or in the middle class. The idea is that it would bring up people above the poverty line, and it's in many cases it's worked, but there's still a lot of speculation about it, even though in some it's been used quite a bit. So here's what I think pretty much it can be used in America, or why it needs to be eventually used in America. So here we go. Our generation is privileged enough to begin our adulthood during a time that will involve the integration of arguably the most important invention ever to be created: artificial intelligence. It will undoubtedly change the way that we look at technology forever once it exceeds the processing ability of a human brain, although in some cases it has already exceeded human ability. Oh, shit. But it also represents the rapid advancement of the use of technology in our everyday lives. As we continue to innovate, we will inevitably inch closer to a future in which the majority of workers will no longer be needed due to the lowering costs of robotic technology and the increasing proficiency of robots to solve problems. Eventually, the only people who will have jobs will be at the very top of society, which would undoubtedly result in one of the largest wage gaps history has ever experienced. This obviously is not ideal, considering the fact that a future like this would entail an incredibly small few controlling the vast majority, who would essentially be living in abject poverty if nothing were done about the situation. So this reality would take place in America, probably, because as we innovate, we inch closer to bring society back to a place that we never thought possible for ourselves. We usually reserve that kind of environment for, I hate to say it, but for like the poorest African countries. But we would be living in one of the most corrupt environments if nothing were done about this. And it will happen as long as we continue to innovate. And in a free market economy, that will happen. So, thing keeps scrolling down. Yeah, no, right. That said, a number of visionaries have looked into the future and drafted up possible solutions to the looming prospect of a dystopian society. Some say that we should simply let the markets go the direction which they decide to go and allow the people to work themselves out. Doing anything else would most likely involve an infringement of the rights and freedoms of the people. There is merit in this, as excessive regulation has historically resulted in the regulator overstepping his power and ultimately becoming the very thing he sought to stop. But simply allowing an entire economy of imperfect humans to go full speed ahead is generally a terrible idea, especially when said humans can so easily be taken advantage of. Considering the following. When artificial intelligence becomes viable for use in business, powerful companies with the means to gain access to it would definitely do so, and as a result would have one of the most powerful tools one could possibly have for supply chain management, manufacturing, and price reduction. This would result in a number of different but equally impactful outcomes. First and foremost, the integration of artificial intelligence, especially an advanced form of it, into a company's supply chain would allow for a significant reduction of the actual number of workers required to make and ship a product. Self-driving cars and tractor-trailers, and robots dedicated to replacing the average unskilled factory worker or truck driver may seem like a distant, even imaginary prospect as I speak to you now, but I assure you that artificial intelligence would be far more cost-efficient and time-efficient. Artificial intelligence that would be far more cost-efficient and time-efficient than the average worker will be a reality within the next century. The advantages of robots as opposed to human workers are obvious. While humans must eat, drink, and sleep, only working for generally 8 to 10 hours per day, robots have no need for anything but fuel and do not have any physical or emotional needs, so requirements for employers to contribute to retirement funds or Medicare would no longer be required. This means that, in a sense, companies with full access to artificial intelligence would essentially be able to have superhumans as slaves, only paying the upfront costs and then enjoying the benefits for decades to come. With these robots working literally 24 hours a day and 7 days a week, hundreds of thousands of workers could be cut out of the supply chain, reducing costs for companies in the hundreds of millions and virtually tripling productivity in one fell swoop. Products could be packaged in minutes, and a one-day delivery could become the norm. You can almost hear Jeff Bezos and Sam Walton peeing their pants in excitement as I tell you this. Once large corporations gain access to artificial intelligence, they will be able to use it to undercut the prices of local businesses at a rate like never before. You think going to the co-op is expensive now? Give it some time. Once big companies have the means to lower supply chain expenses to the degree that I just described, small businesses that don't have artificial intelligence will not be able to come close to comparable to the prices of the largest American corporations, and their business will suffer horribly as a result. As this disparity between small business pricing and large retailer pricing continues to grow, so will the consumer attraction to large retailers, and eventually choices for the average American will almost entirely be reduced to the largest companies, such as Walmart. If this seems unlikely, just consider what advancements in technology have allowed modern companies to do today. Walmart's prices have become so low that in the upcoming year, they could be looking at every person in the world making an average of 1.1 purchases with them, according to Business Insider. That number will only go up as long as Walmart is able to access technology that small businesses can. Some might propose that we just all boycott big corporations. There are two problems with this. First, a campaign to boycott business would most likely never work because humans can easily be manipulated into purchasing products from a company that they are well aware is not great for them or their country. Take any given holiday season during our lifetimes. People have quite literally died trying to buy toys and gifts from corporations. By simply dropping prices and launching aggressive marketing campaigns, a company can incentivize consumers to wait for hours, even days, simply to get a good deal. The pursuit of objects is at its peak, and corporations could never be happier. Perhaps our generation may change this trend, but ultimately, we humans naturally will pursue material wealth as long as we have the means to access it. And a massive corporation with a plethora of resources easily can cause us to take ourselves to the limit to do exactly that. Today, many can just do their best to buy local and reduce spending, but this will not affect much in the grander scheme of things. We still are finding ourselves throwing money at these corporations in spite of our awareness of the harm that they cause the economy, as long as they are able to maximize convenience for the moment and undercut the competitors' prices. Second, some companies will always be larger than others in our economy. If we are to consider ourselves a free market, we can't just suppress business to prevent them from becoming powerful. Even if we decide to do that, innovation would grind to a halt, and the stock market would become basically useless. Large corporations are in many ways essential for the preservation and advancement of society in that they stimulate innovation and lower prices significantly, which will not only provide for consumers around the globe, but also for investors who desire to make money, and who will use that profit they make from large corporations to hopefully invest in startups preparing to make big advancements in the technology industry. In short, big corporations in all industries will inevitably become some of the first to get their hands on a practical form of AI, and we can't do much to stop them. It is simply the nature of a free market economy. When they do get their hands on this technology, they will be able to lower prices dramatically, which will not only result in massive layoffs, but also will cause small businesses to lose money or even close as a result of severe price disparities. This is not mere speculation, but a natural progression of events that would occur if a practical form of AI is developed. Some might suggest that this technology should be heavily regulated to only be used by the government, but I would argue that this won't work for two reasons. First, regulation probably wouldn't work because restricting a technology with such potential for success and innovation from being used by the people would be appalling to both American voters and politicians. And secondly, AI will already be in the hands of large corporations before any legislation can be passed, even if it were to be proposed, at which point corporations and Americans themselves would cry foul. So AI will probably come about, and when it does, corporations will inevitably get their hands on it, and workers will be laid off by the hundreds of thousands, even millions, and small businesses will be destroyed. What will we do? Do we go back to the dark ages and shun technology and capitalism altogether? Do we just accept the massive amounts of abject poverty and corruption and continue on? Do we throw a temper tantrum and tweet about it? No, we do none of that. I propose that once we find ourselves in this situation, we implement a universal basic income. The benefits of doing so would be numerous. First and foremost, it would allow people who originally were living in poverty to their replacement by automation to finally live above the poverty line. Additionally, a UBI would be a great way, and arguably the only way, to evenly distribute income and therefore the fruits of technological innovation. That said, we as Americans cringe a bit at the very mention of even distribution of income. But the hard reality of it is that there is really no way to properly run a society in the way in which we currently do, that is, being full-on capitalists, once automation takes over almost all of our jobs. If there is no way to employ ourselves, then there is no source of income for the average person. From my perspective, this UBI and the entirely different society resulting from it just might change how we see each other. Perhaps we could finally experience equality as it has truly been dreamt to be by our predecessors. Maybe the racial wealth gap will finally close shut for good, and every man, woman, and child will finally be on the same level. Maybe money will not be a pursuit, but rather a necessary resource to get by, like food and water. Maybe we will finally enjoy life for what it is and start to pursue what we love rather than what we want. Maybe we can just be